So we're like just seconds, right? All right. Okay, ladies, we're almost ready.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that was you can hear it, but not too loud.
Okay. I'm hearing outdoor something going on.
Well, let me click you.
Okay. All right. Should I wear my glasses or not? I need to see.
You look great either way.
2, 1.
Hey, Sacramento. It is Wednesday. You are listening to 97.5 FM KDEE. I am Agent Key. And as always, again, I am excited about today's show. 2 reasons. So I really love the fact that I get to work in an industry where I feel like I'm not working, where I feel like I get to help make change happen. And so that's so exciting for me. And for that reason, I'm really excited about today's show for 2 reasons. For the guests that I have on the show today, you are going to be super surprised. And then, number 1, I talked about it last week, but we are bringing back Anchor Homeownership Academy. If you participated in the academy in February 2020, you know that it was amazing. So I talked a little bit about what it was last week. If you weren't listening, if you weren't able to hear the show, if you want to know, Keisha, what are you talking about, Anchor Homeownership Academy? Is this some kind of buyer's workshop, home buyer's workshop? No, it's not. So if you listen to this radio station for any length of time, you know who Jay King is. Not only is he the president of the California Black Chamber of Commerce, but he is what I like to call the resident historian. He knows history like the back of his arm, in particular, Black history as it pertains to the issues that have occurred to African Americans and the reason that things are the way they are as a result of those issues. So he has a quote that I like to use, and he said, "It's difficult to hold somebody accountable if you don't hold you accountable." And I love that quote because oftentimes you're born into a circumstance and you have no control over that. Or you are placed in a circumstance that you have no control over. Life just happens sometimes. But what that quote is saying is that just because it has happened doesn't mean you have to stay there. To stay there is a choice. And whether it is you making a decision to find the tools and resources to escape your situation, making up your mind to get out of a situation, or someone presents an opportunity to you and you take advantage of it, you always have a choice. In most cases, we have a choice. And so it is with that in mind that Anchor Homeownership Academy was created. And it is Sacramento's first 2-day home buyer preparedness conference with an emphasis on debt-free living, credit restoration, down payment assistance, and investing. And for 2022, we are adding introduction to cryptocurrency. Yes. There is an article that I read that said African Americans are the largest investor in cryptocurrency over this past year. And I think it's because of the ease, not only the ease of access, but there are tons and tons and tons of social media influencers who have become very, very wealthy, very well versed in that space. The reason we want to bring it to the academy is because, and along with stocks, introduction to investing in stocks and options, is because we want you to have a foundation as to what these things are, because they are, not only are they the trend, they are the new normal. And we need to be well versed in them ourselves on the basics. Just like when the microwave was first invented, people were afraid of that. Don't stand too close. You might get, radiation and all that. You're gonna die. You're gonna die. And I haven't heard of any deaths yet as a result of microwaves, but it could be. However, there was some skepticism at first, right? With any new technology, there's skepticism. Anybody remember the VHS, VCR? They were in real quick and now they're gone. And we're on to something else. And so now we are in this realm of this virtual currency. And as a community, we need to be well versed in that. So we will have that as a new section in the class. The other thing that I'm really excited about is that we have secured a national keynote speaker. I'm so excited about this part. I can hardly contain myself because of how it panned out, y'all. Can I just say this? Can I just say, I end the show like this. If you're doing what you were created to do, I'll see you at the top. You know how I say that? When you start walking out the things that are still instilled within you, when you start walking in that direction and stop trying to be like somebody else, when you walk in your authenticity, I don't know what to call it, your gifts and your talents, I do know what to call it, other doors will open for you. Don't be afraid to meet people. Don't be afraid to make new connections. I'm happy that I'm not afraid to make new connections, or else I wouldn't get to introduce you all to my guests who are on the show today, who are patiently waiting for me to introduce them. But they tie right in to this show. We're talking about making foundational changes. We're talking about shaking up the old foundation and putting in a new one in your financial life and in our what do we want to call it? Policies, laws, the foundation of America. Can we just say that? You all know that the Constitution actually does allow that if the people are not satisfied with the way that the government is set up, the people have a right to come in and tear it down and rebuild it to where it works for everybody. That's on a national level, a state level, a local level. And using the word tear down, that sounds kind of harsh and hard, but we do it every day. There are amendments, there are elections, you out with the old, in with the new. There is a way to do things decently and in order. And I kind of jumped ahead of myself a little bit. I want to get back to Anchor Homeownership Academy. So really quickly, the beginning of February 2020, when we first had it, we had slots for 50 people. And I ended up doing 5 scholarships. So we had a total of 55 people. I wanted to keep it small, so the classroom sizes were small so that everyone could get personalized one-on-one attention if they needed. And a lot of the feedback was that they really appreciated how smoothly it was, how organized it was. They really appreciated the guest speakers that we had. We want to keep that trend that they were able to get one-on-one attention. And so we're making it larger this year, but not too large. So there will only be, and we went through logistics. I went through logistics with someone over the past couple of days. We will only have space for 200. And that might sound like a lot. That's like a tremendous number for me because I am a control freak. I want to make sure, my engineer's looking at me like, what, really? What? That's sarcasm, y'all. because I want to make sure that everyone gets served. Customer service is my highest priority next to tacos, tacos and customer service. Um, so we want to make sure that you get served well. So, and as a result, where we had one class, we had, let me try to describe the first evening, everyone that attended the event attended the debt free living class. The next day, everyone came and we broke out into classes that everyone circulated through. There were 3 classes. And by the time the 3 hours were over, you circulated through the 3 classes. This year, we will have 9 classes. And of the 9 classes, there will only be 3 categories, but that's to allow for more people to circulate through and keep the class sizes small. So, and why just 200? Because we know how to use the space where the event will be held, so that the only thing that changes is the number of classes, and we increase the size of people so that we keep that control over everything else. We make sure that you get a great event. We make sure that you get great instruction. I'm just excited about this. And then there are a couple of other individuals that we're bringing on board that are going to really blow your mind. I'm excited about who our sponsors will be. You guys, this is just so amazing. You're going to love it. So I said all of that to prepare you that registration will begin the first week of January. Stay tuned in to this show so that you will get the information as to what the registration link is. I'm keeping that under wraps. So I'll release the registration. Registration will go up the first week of January. In December, I'll be announcing, actually, I may be able to announce within the next couple of weeks, the first part of December, who our keynote speaker will be. And so I'm looking forward to that. So I had to get all of that out the way. Before we go on break, I want to introduce to you my very special guest. I was invited to speak to a group of individuals who had formed a committee as a result of the George Floyd incident. You're going to be surprised to learn about this committee. Again, why they established themselves and what they are doing. I thought it was very important to have them represented on the show here, because we need to understand that we are not an island in and of ourselves, and it will take all of us to make things happen, to bring peace and harmony, to bring social justice, to make all of that happen. It takes all of us. And not only does it take, or will it take all of us, but it takes having the hard conversations and asking the tough questions and being willing to look in the mirror at which part you're responsible for, or which part your ancestors were responsible for, what kind of work can be done, what can happen. So what are you talking about, Keisha? Get to the point. I am happy to introduce to you all today representatives of the Racial Justice Committee. I'm sorry, let me back up. The Curtis Park Ad Hoc Racial Justice Committee. Yes, I said Curtis Park. Okay, can we just stop there? Just using the word Curtis Park, as some of you like Curtis Park. Oh, we see where this is going, right? Because historically, we know there are certain parts of the city that are exclusively I was going to use one word, but I wanted to say something else. Mimi, what would be a appropriate phrase to say right here?
You could just say it.
The color of
This
the
is what I'm talking about.
The color of law, yes.
White neighborhoods, right? And not white in a negative way, but just white, the racial makeup, right? So you heard me say Mimi. I'm going to introduce her first. Mimi has lived in Curtis Park since 1981, and she served previously as both a member and president of the SCNA board. So that would be the Sierra Curtis Neighborhood Association Board. She's an attorney who's worked for several elected members of the California legislature and numerous state departments during her career. At the Department of Alcohol and Drug Programs, she served as chief counsel. Mimi is active in Emily's List, which is a PAC to support Democratic women candidates, the Brady Campaign United Against Gun Violence. Actually, is Mimi's List separate from the PAC? Did I say that right? Or is
No, you're right. It's exactly right.
Okay. And she organized a group of neighbors who meet monthly to advocate political issues. She served in the Peace Corps in Nigeria, West Africa, and is currently vice president of the committee. She's participated in the Oak Park Peace Walk, and she currently serves on the SCNA Racial Justice Committee and Neighborhood Concerns Committee. She's also working to further cooperative relationships between SCNA and other neighborhood associations. Miss Mimi Budd, welcome.
Thank you, Key. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yes. And then her counterpart, her partner in crime, Miss Kathy Less. She has called Curtis Park her home for nearly 38 years. She's a former historic preservation professional and journalist. She's long been involved in the Sierra Curtis Neighborhood Association, having previously served on the board in the early 2000s. From 2003 to 2005, she was SCNA's executive director. She returned to the SCNA board in 2019 as their vice president. And in 2020, following the killing of George Floyd, she co-founded SCNA's Ad Hoc Racial Justice Committee and currently serves as its chair. Miss Kathy, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's truly an honor.
And we're honored to have you
for the
both.
Conversation.
Yes, we're honored to have you both because you are doing some, not only, so I like the fact that reading your bios, there is a huge amount of life that you've seen and experienced based on your job background, your skill set. You could be doing anything else right now is basically what I'm trying to say. You have the credibility, the pedigree to be doing anything other than what you're doing. Why? What was it that triggered the need, that you felt the need for this ad hoc racial justice committee to be formed?
Well, would you like me to start on that?
Sure.
Okay. So at the time of the murder of George Floyd, every organization in the United States was writing a statement, and our organization wanted to do that too. And we've gone through periods like this before in racial history, at least recent racial history, where everybody comes out with their statement of empathy, sympathy, and so forth. And I didn't really feel that was enough. I thought we'd done that before. I was only willing to sign on to the statement if we were going to have some follow-up and really try to do something. Mm-hmm. And of course, at the beginning of things like this, you never know where you're going or what you're doing. You kind of just make it up as you go along. And a group of 3 of us got together following the written statement and decided that we would start this committee and see what we could do. And so it has really evolved from there. We've really only been in existence for 1.5 years, but we adopted 3 categories that we thought we could make a difference in, or at least take some initiative in. And I'll just tell you briefly what they are. The first one was personal connections. We really wanted to reach out to people of color, and in particular, our own neighborhood, which is Oak Park. And I think we've made some good strides to make good connections with them. And we're working in partnership with them on several issues together. And the relationship just keeps growing, and we're really happy about that. The second area was we wanted to work on what we called self-work education. We wanted to educate ourselves, and we wanted to educate our community. And we jumped right out of the hat with that and did a 2-part webinar exploring racial exclusion, racial covenants, and redlining right here in our own hometown, in our own home neighborhood. And we paired that with a webinar on implicit bias. And we've done some other things as well, but those were the 2 main things that really got us going. And then our third big area is advocacy. And oh boy, there's an issue a day that we could get involved in, and we'll talk about some of those. But the one that really we worked on in the very beginning, and it seemed like it would be not easy, but quick. And that was the new Helvetia public housing project that was proposed for demolition, at least in part. And we joined with a lot of other neighborhood associations to advocate that it not be demolished and that the residents not be evacuated, displaced, and that the housing instead be renovated. And it looks like we made some good progress there. And since that time, it's just been one thing or another. But we have the philosophy as a committee that our neighborhood association can try and lead the way on these issues. And believe me, they're not always overtly racial issues. They're just issues in our community where maybe at the base of it is race, or maybe a big part of it is race. And so we're doing what we can, trying to keep ourselves informed, network, and moving forward.
And I want you to be able to pull the curtain back on some of those issues that you're tackling. We're going to take a break. But before we take a break, I want to read the statement that you referenced, where you said you were not going to sign off on it unless you guys were actually going to do some real work in making and being effective and change. And so here's the statement that Kathy is referencing. This is their statement that they came up with after the George Floyd incident. George Floyd's unjustified death has triggered an outpouring of anger and protests about the manner in which he died. Anyone viewing the video of his treatment at the hands of the 4 Minneapolis police officers cannot help but be outraged by the conduct of those police officers. The Sierra Curtis Neighborhood Association, its members, and our neighborhood stand with those who have marched and who will march and protest peaceably in support of an end to racial injustice and inequity. Through Sierra 2 Center, we promote diversity and cultural inclusivity, and will continue to do so. However, we can and must do better. We see you, we hear you, we support you. We join you in demanding greater focus and progress on the substantive changes that are badly needed in our social and civic structures to achieve real and tangible equity and justice for all. This devastating event is another wake-up call demanding that we work to build a better and more equitable Sacramento. We don't presume to have answers, but we are committed to continuing our long-standing practice of working with sister neighborhood associations and our civic leaders to reinvigorate the discussion and the search for new and better solutions for existing inequity and injustice fueled by racism and indifference. The immortal words of Martin Luther King are instructive and were never more appropriate than now. And injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I love that. That's very to say, I'm not, because it's such a strong statement, right? So I can see you saying, but are we going to do anything about this? It's one thing to have a strong statement. It's something totally different to actually do something about it. We are going to let Mimi and Kathy tell us exactly how they are making change in and around Curtis Park. When we come back from the break, you're listening to 97.5 FM KDEE. I'm Agent Key, and we'll be right back. Ladies, the floor will be open to you to talk about everything that you want to do. everything that you want to discuss and that you're doing. And just as a cue, if I take you to the screen, to the solo layout, if you're talking and if I bring you back, that's a cue to wrap it up a little bit. Because I want you to say as much as you want, but then I don't want to jump in verbally and interrupt you. So I want you to naturally feel how you can close it out. Okay. Thank you all for watching. If you're tuning in, let us know you're there. Say something, make a comment, ask the ladies a question. Thank them for what they're doing. All of you who are watching, we appreciate you so much. What was that? A separate mic for myself? Why?
Well, it'd be easier for me to control their volume when they start to speak.
Oh, really?
I mean, I can do it.
Oh, you know, oh, you're so kind.
That's right.
Well, that would be nice. You should have told me, Keisha. You know, the last few times that we've been on air, I didn't have a guest, and so I just got accustomed to. I
made it work, but it's just a little.
I took your mic, and that was his nice way of telling me I been using your mic.
Oh.
The other, so it's easier for me to control it.
You're right. You're right.
And then I'll have to keep doing this with you.
I'm glad I was nice about it and didn't bite your head off. Like, what are you talking about? Okay, is that better?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now he can control your levels better, and then the listening audience can hear you better.
Right. That was really bad.
It's okay. Come out and say.
No, I just balanced out the mic.
Okay.
I'm good at what I do.
You are good at what you do. Gracias, señor.
It just makes it easy for you and you, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes your passion is a little higher, sometimes a little lower.
I know. So we've got comments. There's my sister saying, hi, sister. Such a great show. Love what Mimi and Kathy are doing on this important topic.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rochelle. Yeah, nice.
Enjoy listening to the ladies. So thankful. Yes. Looking forward to learning more.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You all will be pleasantly surprised. Pleasantly surprised. Sounds like we're almost coming back from the break. Okay.
And you're going to ask some questions, correct?
Yes, I'm actually getting back to my notes right here.
Ask us whatever you want.
Okay. I will.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, we are back. You're listening to 97.5 FM KDEE. I am Agent Key, and my guests on today's show are Miss Mimi Budd and Miss Kathy Less, and they are with the Curtis Park Ad Hoc Racial Justice Committee. We're talking about, before the break, we talked about why the committee was formed, and now I want to give them an opportunity to tell you all what specifically the committee is doing. And so before we talk about what the committee was doing, Mimi, can you tell the audience how our connection came to be? I hinted at it.
Well, Kathy Less, who is always has an eye out for someone knowledgeable and that we ought to learn from, learned about you in the article in the Sacramento Bee. You and several other realtors were featured, and Kathy said, I think this would be important to reach out to her. And she did. And next thing you know, you were at our racial justice meeting and educating us on a lot of really great information about the Black community, the difficulties in home buying and home ownership and financial stability. And from that meeting, where we all benefited, you were then kind enough to contact us to ask us to get together for a coffee and a chat, which then led to the appearance on your radio show.
Right. And so the thing that, if you could talk a little bit about the meeting that I was invited to speak at, because that just threw me. I was really like, wow, I am in this Zoom room with like 12 white people. They're all looking to me for answers, and they're asking me these very hard questions, and they are really trying to. What was that meeting? Because that wasn't the first time that you've all met like that.
Oh, no. We meet, originally we were meeting a couple times a month. Now I think we're meeting once a month. And what we try and do is have somebody come to the meeting and address us about a topic of concern, usually involving the racial justice issue. And we, in your case, we opened the meeting up to people on the Neighborhood Concerns Committee as well, or maybe the full board, Kathy. Was it the full board?
Yeah, I think it was, yes.
Yes. So you had the full, not everybody on the board, but a much greater representation of our board there at the meeting with you, and because they were interested in what you had to say.
And I must say, you gave me a copy of those notes. Somebody took super copious notes.
That would be Mimi.
That would be me.
Yeah. Key, I just wanted to add to what Mimi said. We have been exploring the issue of housing from various angles around racial justice. And we talked a lot about how we could attract more people of color into our neighborhood, what that would take, and so forth and so on. And when I saw the article on these Black realtors, natives to Sacramento, that really gripped me, that they were all natives and that they were really wanting to empower Black home ownership. So I thought, well, voila, that is somebody that we need to learn from, and find out her take on things. And for me, there were a lot of things that I learned from your talk. But one of the things that was so seminal was, we know about the discrimination with FHA historically and Blacks being excluded. But what I didn't fully understand is that even today, if a Black prospective owner steps forward and proposes to purchase a home with an FHA loan, that there's an indirect discrimination that takes place, because typically sellers would rather have cash or they'd rather have a conventional loan.
Right. And it's so subtle, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so subtle. And I think when we were talking about, I think it was last week that I mentioned that, and Ryan Lundquist, a local real estate appraiser who often tunes into the show, and I defer to him often because he's a statistic magician. He just does it all. And he's just an awesome person. He shot a statistic over during the show last week that talked about the representation of FHA transactions that had closed. I want to say it was for September, and it was somewhere around 9%. And he just threw that out there. He said, just in case you needed a stat, here you go. Mm. And so if we're thinking about the representation of FHA buyers, that racial makeup of that particular loan, but only 9% closed, that's screaming something at us, right?
Also of interest was the appraisers and the prejudice by appraisers they've done studies to show that if an appraiser senses this is a Black-owned home, it may get a lower appraisal than a white-owned home, which is insidious. Yeah.
Right. And these are conversations that you can't have at your dinner table without having someone who's actually experiencing it at the dinner table with you, right? So I'm using that just as but there are conversations that we are having within our own circles that we need to start having with each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. When I originally was part of the small group that was birthing this committee, one of my original ideas was that we would actually have in-home exchanges. Mm-hmm. And it was based on another group that I knew about out of Minneapolis, where you have a group from another neighborhood, people of color, over to your house and you go to their house. But then COVID hit. Mm-hmm. So nobody was going anywhere, not to anybody's houses. So maybe we'll get back to that. I would really like to do that. And Key, you'll be my first guest.
Thank you. You know, I'm house hunting, and I put Curtis Park on the list. So
we hope so.
Yeah, and I think that's an awesome idea. And just the idea of not having the fear, of what was I reading? I was reading something. There's a library. They call it the Human Library something. I need to pull it up. but it's basically the same type of concept where in the living library, I think that's what it's called. And you meet with someone, you go to this library not to get a book, but to actually have an interaction with someone who is nothing like you, where you sit down and you have an open dialogue conversation in a safe environment and you tackle tough issues. And as I was reading the article, they were describing the people that were meeting. One of the meetups was a woman who was a Protestant Christian, and she met with a transsexual woman. And they talked about how the meeting began. It was a little tense, and then at the end of the meeting they were hugging and laughing. And I don't know what was said, but dealing with I'm assuming maybe they moderated that meeting somehow, but when you start actually sitting down with people and you see how much you really have in common, then I think that helps tear down bridges. Mimi, were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say connectivity and connections, and you mentioned that in the introduction. And that's, as Kathy mentioned, one of our goals as well, reaching out to different neighborhood associations, different people. And I think if you do that and get a little uncomfortable maybe at first, those are some of, I found my best growth is when I start off a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And see where you go.
There needs to be that expectation. I like that you use that word, discomfort and being uncomfortable, because oftentimes in the Black community, there is a saying that we're accustomed to where we have to make white people comfortable. And so now there is this phrase that I'm no longer concerned with making you comfortable. And it almost feels like a release, but it's something that our parents and our grandparents felt compelled to do, and those before them, just to be able to fit in, just to be able to get into the spaces where white people are represented opportunity. And so now where we are, fast forward today, now that the world has changed and how success can happen has changed, we are now seeing that we don't have to feel compelled to make someone comfortable. We can actually create these spaces of opportunities for ourselves. But at the same time, now we don't want to go creating some whole new, place and space that are without white people or any race. We want to live in a world where everyone can peaceably exist together, ultimately, right?
Well, it's acknowledging. I read that book, Eddie Glaude, Begin Again, and he talks about you just have to face what was real. I mean, what's really happened, so that you can then get into the space where you can just be comfortable together being you. But you got to acknowledge what was real and what is real, Yeah.
And so to that point, the 3 points that Kathy mentioned that you all are working on, you talked about advocacy, you talked about education, and you talked about making connections. Let's talk a little bit about the advocacy work that you're doing. When you mentioned the New Helvetia project, where are things with that? Do you have an update on that?
Well, my understanding is that the city agreed to not dislocate the residents there and to keep the options open. And I think it's going to move forward in that direction, actually, to tell you.
And they also said that it isn't current, that what they were proposing that got all of us riled up. Well, no, it's not going to happen right now. This would be later. But in fact, they did back off in terms of not displacing people when it does happen. So they said.
I've not heard about anything about it in the news lately. And so I know the last time we kind of talked about it loosely, I thought, things have gotten a little quiet over there about that New Helvetia project. Might be time to open that back up and see what's going on, because we know what happens in the cloak of night, so.
Yeah, if you don't pay attention. On our website, we have a very expansive resource list, we call it, for lack of a better word, of books and movies and videos and so forth and so on. And one of them that I added to the website was from a PBS show on a public housing project. I think it was in Minnesota or Michigan, I don't remember which, where they did decide, the city or the agency did decide to knock it down with the promise that the people would be welcome back. Well, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
By the time the thing was rebuilt, the people had established lives elsewhere. The prices on the new units were too high.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's like anything, you know, you have to know history so you don't repeat history. And
Right.
that's part of what we're trying to do, is know enough about all of the mistakes that have already been made so we don't keep repeating them over and over.
And I feel like your committee is now like the unofficial grandparent or that aunt, uncle, you know, that gets out in front of stuff, because you also did something as it with regard to police reform. Who wants to talk about that?
Sure, I will talk about that. It's a little bit more dry than what we've been talking about, actually. But you were talking about what inspired us, you know, to get involved. And actually, for me, it was a previous board, and it was the death of Stephen Clark. And our SCNA board at that time also did a resolution and said something has to be done about policing. We need to have the Attorney General involved in this overview investigation, and there has to be change. This isn't, we can't abide by this. And so we got involved with this current.
Uh-oh, we lost Mimi a little bit there.
Racial justice. Am I back? Hello?
You are back. You said you got involved with,
Yes, we looked at the Attorney General recommendations for police reform. And we also followed the recommendations of the Sacramento Community Police Review Commission. And those recommendations went back and forth to the police chief and the police department. And so we would weigh in, although our committee was a little nervous because they said we don't have the professional experience to really judge telling the police how they should do their job. But we talked about it a little, and we decided, you know what? We're Sacramentans, we're human beings. What's happening isn't right. And so we want to know, we want them to know that we're watching and that there needs to be change. I will say, as an aside, that the Attorney General mentioned that Mayor Steinberg and Chief Hahn came to him initially and said, we need help in reviewing this. And Chief Hahn, to his credit, was way ahead of the game. As soon as he became police chief, he was looking at cameras, body cameras, for example, the chase policies. So he's ahead of the curve, I would say. But the AG was concerned about the use of force, for example, and particular personnel policies, so that police could do something bad and then they would just be transferred to another jurisdiction and nothing was done. So this kind of thing. Anyway, we followed back and forth as these recommendations and amendments were flying back and forth. We listened to Kieran Savage Sangwan, who was the past chair of the police commission, and she brought up the issues of use of force, scaling down the department, de-escalating, the culture of policing needing to change. And we kept involved, and there was a subcommittee. We would look at what these changes were, bring them back to the committee, and then just follow it as it went along. And finally, we heard from Mario Guerrero, who was the brand new chair of the police commission. And we said, what do you need? And he said, we need support. Somebody's got to go to the city council and say, we want these recommendations passed. So we called on Jay Chenier, who is our District 5 supervisor, city council person, and he came and spoke to the committee, gave us his ideas about the recommendations, said basically these are good recommendations, and I have to admit we don't pay enough attention to the commissions at the city council level. But he said we've got the city manager with the ultimate power, we've got police union problems and so forth. But believe it or not, as I'm sure you all followed, in May of 2021 and June of 2021, the city council adopted the commission's language. And instead of, quote, they talked about reasonable alternatives to the use of force, de-escalating by a police person, and restricting when an officer can legally open fire. That is the use of deadly force only as a last resort. And that incorporated language from AB 392, a state law that was begun after Stephen Clark's death to address the use of force. So Mario Guerrero said, the commission and the community are finally being taken seriously. And there's a number of other state laws that have been passed now too about policing, decertifying police, crimes for misconduct, banning chokeholds, raising the minimum age of a police officer from 18 to 21 so you're more mature, stopping police using tear gas and non-lethal projectiles. So my point is, going forward, we will probably keep watching, because now the devil's in the training, the details of the training of the officers. And I know the signal, but it's my final thing would be to say, don't let anybody tell you it doesn't matter to speak out, because Black Lives Matter, Black Child Legacy, Urban League, NAACP, and other people like us, citizens following their lead, it makes a difference. It actually makes a difference. And our people who are elected officials do listen, and they will make change, even though they can't bring back the dead.
I love that. All of that. I love that. And when I went back to the other screen, I wanted you to just keep going, because what you're saying, it does. I know that there were other organizations, Black organizations, that were working just as hard to get all of that passed. But did we know that you were working behind the scenes? That's what I want this listening audience to know, so we could be working in our own lane, doing what we're supposed to do. And then here's somebody else we didn't even know existed. That's also an ally.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because Daryl Roberts at the center in Meadowview, Del Paso, we were in communication at one point. This was after Stefan Clark. And I said, what can we do? And he said, come to the city council meetings. We need white faces there. They're used to hearing Black people say this. So your point is well taken.
Yes. And that is when they take, and you pointed out, they are representatives. They are elected officials. And if they get to these tables where we are often not invited, and they're saying things that we don't want to be said, we unelect them, and we unelect them as a group. When we're all on the same page like this, we can all come together and make this kind of change that you're referencing. They then come back to us, to our smaller groups, to our citizens groups, and they say, hey, what do you want to hear? What do you want us to say? But I like the fact also that your group is proactive in pulling them into your meetings.
That's a good point, Key, because I think that's one area where we feel some pride on this issue. We certainly take no credit for it. But when we met with Mario Guerrero, who is the chair of the local police citizens advisory commission, there was so much frustration in his voice. I don't want to say he was about ready to give up, but he was so frustrated. He said that these recommendations had been languishing for, I think, 5 years that they had been made. And when Mimi asked the question, like she said, what can we do? He informed us that all of the council people have a person on the commission who's their commissioner, and that we should also be talking to our council person. Well, duh, our council person lives in our neighborhood. And so we got him to our meeting and said, we do care about this and we're watching. And I think it was some of the impetus that helped him realize that, all right, we got to finally move forward on this. We can't keep making excuses, bouncing it back and forth. And so it's great. They took some action. Is it perfect action? No. Is it going to solve all the problems? No, but it's finally a step forward in that area, at least for our community.
Right. And it's real action. It's real change that we're talking about. It's not just something that's pomp and circumstance. It's going to really impact effective change. And we're going to take a break. But when we come back, we're going to get you ladies to answer a question that one of our viewers just posted. And we're going to close out with some final thoughts from you both. You're listening to 97.5 FM KDEE. I am Agent Key, and we'll be right back. So I'll let y'all see her question in advance. Oh, great question.
Wow.
So I'll let y'all mull on that for a moment. Okay. And then at that time, when we come back from the break, we'll also give them the website that's been scrolling across the board. We'll let our listening audience in on it, and I'll tell them some of the items that they'll be able to find on the website. It's very in depth, and I'm very excited about what your group is doing. And I really think, and I'm going to say this when we come back from the break too, other neighborhood associations should take notice if they haven't already. And I don't know if there are association awards that could be granted, but y'all are in the running for the top award as far as I'm concerned. You really are.
Well, we have a little bit of an advantage because we're a very long-standing neighborhood association, and we have a good foundation. We have the school that we have title to manage and run, which I call the crown jewel of our community. And that gives our neighborhood such a focus. And we do a lot of things for the neighborhood. We have music in the park. We have recently during
COVID. You're going to have to repeat all of this.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's good information.
Yes.
All right.
Because I think that, people probably drive by there. It's been there forever.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
1926, I think it is.
Yeah. So people probably drive by and don't even realize what it is that they're passing by. Mm-hmm. So it'd be good if you could talk about that too, because I think I had mentioned before, the Sacramento Realtors have their monthly meeting there. Mm-hmm. The Downtown Association, so many different things that happen there. And then I saw on the website, you were getting into the arts and the other activities and things. So that is, like, as you said, the crowning jewel of the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Are we coming back from the break? Okay. Someone brought my lunch in, ladies, and so I'm having a hard time focusing.
Enjoy.
I walked into the station today hungry. So here's my lunch. Let me see.
Good. What is it? Ooh.
Fries.
Yum.
Oh my goodness. So imagine the smell of the station right now.
Yeah. You want to hurry and get this show over with.
Yes. Like, hurry up. How many more minutes? Okay.
Kathy, have we covered what we needed to? I was thinking of we talked about the housing, the importance of housing and people that come to speak to us.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much more we could go into, but I think this question will be a good wide open.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Mm-hmm. All right.
Good. And Kathy Les, and they are with the Curtis Park Ad Hoc Social Justice Committee, Racial Justice Committee. We have had just an awesome, robust conversation. And before we go, I want to make sure that we give them an opportunity to tell you as much as possible about what it is that they're doing. And one of our watchers, one of our viewers on social media asked a question. Miss Rochelle said, "We love the work you're doing. Please share what the people listening can do to support your efforts."
Well, we would love to meet any of you who want to come meet with us. That would be my first reaction. I'm trying to think of the best way you could contact us, but you could go to our website. I think there's a way you can send messages there, but otherwise I don't mind giving out my email address, I suppose, because we're all about expanding our circle and meeting with as many.
If you don't mind sharing your email address, Kathy, because there are a lot of people who listen to this show who are leaders in positions of leadership with their organizations, community organizations, and I'm sure they would love to be able to get a little bit closer to what it is that you're doing. And you may even be able to circle back to them to see what they're doing, cross-reference resources.
I'm happy to too, Key. Should we put it in the chat?
Yes, go ahead and say it over air if you don't mind, and then we'll put it in the chat so that we can have the listeners hear it and then the viewers to see it.
Okay. Mine sounds just like my name. It's Kathy, Kathy .les, that's one S as in Sam, 321 @gmail.com.
Okay, one more time because someone just ran to get a pencil and now they're back.
Okay. Kathy, Kathy. Oh, my chat's not working. KATHY.les321@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you. Miss Mimi?
And mine is literally my name, which is Mimi Budd at Comcast.net.
And spell that for us.
MIMIBUDD at Comcast.net. And I'm in the
Perfect.
chat.
And then the website, everyone, is sierra2.org/racial-justice. Sierra, SIERRA, the number 2.org/racial-justice. If you go to that website, you are going to find a ton of information. They have their web series seminar of individuals who have come and spoke with them. Some of you know Ginger Rutland. She's been on the show before. Dr. Allison Ledgerwood, UCD professor in Curtis Park, neighbor there in Curtis Park, recommended resources and reading, history on slavery, learning about anti-racism. This website is set up not for us. This is set up for their neighborhood. This is set up for the 76% white neighborhood. Is that the makeup there?
Yeah.
For them
Yeah.
to go to
Yes.
and learn how to unlearn. This is just amazing stuff. Black voices and Black experiences, children and young adults, where to shop locally, Sacramento area community resources, reflections on slavery, civil rights, and more. So they've got books here. Oh, it's just a ton of information. Videos built right into the website. It is very well done. And so going to this website, you are seeing what they're creating a new narrative for that community. And I said during the break, other neighborhood associations would do well to learn from you. Any closing thoughts, ladies? Any things you want to share before we?
Thank you for having us, Key, and for your listeners for listening. And to me, it's a seed planted because we've connected and the seed grows into a tree and we reconnect at who knows how many different points. So I find this very positive and enlightening. Yeah. Thank you.
I agree.
And I want to go back to the quote that you said at the beginning of the program. How can you hold others accountable if you don't hold yourself accountable? And I think that's really the fundamental foundation of our committee is, how can we hold ourselves more accountable for historical things, present day things? And there's just so much to penetrate and learn and so many ways that we can be active in our community and more broadly.
Right. Well, I appreciate you ladies for taking time out of your day to be here. I know this won't be our last time connecting, but I just had to tell the world about you. I just had to let everybody know that you exist and what you're doing in your corner of the world. And we're all responsible for taking care of our own little corners of the world. We don't have to worry about everything going on in the rest of the world, because God has somebody in every part of the world that he's given an assignment to. And if you stay in your own lane, as my pastor says, you stay in your own lane, you'll take care of business the way it's supposed to be taken care of. You're listening to 97.5 FM KDEE. I am Agent Key. And remember, if you are doing what you were created to do, I will see you at the top.
Oh, love that.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Enjoyed it, Key. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
In touch. You're
Thank
so
you for all you're
welcome.
doing for the community too. Gosh.
For sure.
Thank you.
Huge,
I'll
yeah.
let you know when I find something that I'm be looking at over there in Curtis Park.
All right. Well, we're going to get a hold of you and tour you around.
We'll show you around for sure. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you. I will. If you see any tutors come on the market, let me know because I'm looking forward to
tutors. Okay.
Okay. You want a tutor? All right. We'll keep our eyes
open.
We'll do. We got a few of those.
Bye, ladies. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.